The first foundation of democracy is the worth of an individual. This means that no matter what stature the individual has, they are a separate and distinct human being. A good example of this would be Annie's Closet in downtown Chatfield. Annie's Closet is a consignment type shop which buys good quality clothes and sells at a lower price. This depicts the worth of an individual because it's showing that not everyone can afford expensive clothes but can still get good quality clothes for cheap. An example of not respecting the worth of an individual would without a doubt be the pre-Holocaust times. When Hitler's government forces all Jews to wear yellow stars all the time to call out that they were Jewish, it took away any worth that they had. At a time where being Jewish was ridiculed and looked down on in Germany, this public proclamation was a social suicide for most. This was taking away any worth that the Jewish people would have because it singled them out and made them a lesser people for that. The next foundation of democracy is the equality of all people. This states that in the words of Thomas Jefferson, all men are created equal. A good example of this is depicted on the wall at the Chosen Valley Care Center. This states that no matter what race, sex, or religion a person is, that is not a basis for being denied a job. This is a great example because it is showing that all are created equal. An example of not showing this foundation would be segregation. Segregation of the blacks and whites after the Civil War was extremely degrading to the African American population. This obviously was not upholding equality of all persons foundation because it was making it public that the white population was supposedly better than the black. This foundation of democracy pictured is known as majority rule minority rights. This stands for the fact that in a democracy, many decide what is best for the country, not just a few or one. A somewhat good example of this would be during the Civil Rights Movement. The government decided that it wasn't right for African Americans to be discriminated against and discontinued the laws that were upholding that standpoint. This is an example because even though some, the minority, didn't like that the laws got cut, the government, as well as others, being the majority, made the correct decision. Shown here is the wrong view of majority rule minority rights. Senate passed a bill stating that any sort of torture of prisoners would be banned. However, former President Bush vetoed the bill, wanting to keep torture as a means of breaking suspected terrorist suspects. This is an example of not upholding majority rule minority rights because the former president made an executive decision against the will of all of Senate. The necessity of compromise is our next foundation of democracy. This means that there must be a give and take belief in democracy, meaning to make the best decision there must be an effort on both sides. This would be shown by the saving of Lake Sumrall. Instead of letting the dirty lake deteriorate, both sides stepped up. It is possible that the residents who want to keep the lake clean must pay $600 a year for up to 10 years to fund the project, as the lawmakers give in and help make the water usable. This is a great example of the give and take belief. A bad example of this would be the ruling of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. He showed zero tolerance for anything other than his rule, and if anyone tried standing up to him or making a point, he would just ignore it, often worse. And in order for a democracy to succeed, you must have compromise. The final foundation of democracy is individual freedom, giving every person the freedom to do what they want. Without this, there would be no democracy. Showing this would be the strike of 12,000 nurses in Minnesota. Through their individual freedom, they had the right to strike for better wages as well as better conditions. A bad example of this foundation would be China's one-child law. By only allowing each family to have one child and issuing a huge fine for anything beyond that takes away from the personal freedom each person should have. Government shouldn't be able to control how many children a family has. By not having this right, this does not uphold the 5 foundations of democracy.